Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So I'm greeting you for another really blustery day here in Spain. The wind is whistling around. Our nerves are on edge. The dogs are on edge. I'm on edge. It's just, what the hell is going on? Oh my God, I feel like I'm in a wind tunnel. Anyway, I just wanted to come on this morning to tell you a little development in the Gus Lamont case. So, there has been an arrest, not for the disappearance of Gus, but connected to the disappearance of Gus, and one of who I think we think is the prime suspect in the disappearance of Gus. So, just first of all, let me say thank you to you all. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you for watching. Can you hear that wind whistling around? It's terrifying. Anyway, yeah, I can't think straight. The poor dog's making whiny noises. Oh, our nerves are on edge. Yeah, thank you to my members. Thank you to those of you who sent Ko-fis. Thank you to those who sent super stickers, PayPal'd me, or sent me emails, left nice comments, contributed to my channel in any positive way. Thank you so much. Hello, you lovely lurkers. Hello, replay crew. And there's nobody in the chat at the moment, but as soon as people come into the chat, I'll say hello to them as well. So let's just have a little recap of this case. We've been covering it, haven't we, right from the get-go. This is a little boy, Gus Lamont. Let's have a look at his beautiful little face. Very sad story, this one. You know, they're all sad, of course. But of course, it always seems to be sadder when children are involved or any, vulnerable people. We've been looking, of course, a lot at the Nancy Guthrie case. That's a case that's commanding attention at the moment. And Nancy, of course, is vulnerable in the other extreme. She's an elderly woman, 84 years old, taken from her bed, and we've been covering that, and that's in America, isn't it? In Arizona. For this case, we're going down under. We're going to Australia, right into the remote part of Australia, Yunta. This is a sheep station, a huge sprawling property with lots of land around it. And according to Gus is 4 years old. He lived on this sheep station with his two grandmas, because one of his grandmas, Josie, was born a man but transitioned 10 years ago, but still lives with the other grandma. So I don't know what their relationship is. It's none of my business, but they're still living together anyway. Whether it's like as a marriage still or whether just convenience. So on this huge sprawling sheep station over there in Yunta, Australia, near Adelaide. Adelaide is probably the nearest town that you might know of. And these two ladies, Gus lived on this sheep station with these two GMAs. There's Josie on the left. She's the GMA that transitioned. And then we've got Shannon on the right. Yeah, also Gus lived there with his mum and his sibling. She has two children. And that is her with her husband. Now, reputedly they split up, and that's why she went back to live on this sheep station. But we don't know, the ins and outs of the personal sort of goings on between them. But anyway, she supposedly, at the time Gus went missing, she was living there. But the person who was looking after him, and this is where there's a little bit of, because right from the get-go, it was said that, I think it's Jessica, the mum's name, and Josie, the other GMA, were at the sheep shearing station or something when this happened, and Gus was being looked after by Shannon. And she was supposedly looking after Gus and his little brother, who is only a baby, which, you know, I don't know, I'm not being horrible or anything, but, you know, toddlers and babies are hard to look after, especially two together. How can you keep your eye on them properly? But anyway, so apparently Gus was playing outside around tea time, playing outside on a pile of sand. She went back out half an hour later, which I still say, and I will always say, that's too long to leave a toddler. You can't leave a toddler 30 minutes to its own devices, because toddlers get into mischief, get into problems, have accidents. You know, there's anything could have happened to Gus in that time. Now, originally, it was thought that he had wandered off or that he'd been abducted. But the bombshell, the real bombshell that came a couple of weeks ago now, was the police announced that they were declaring this a major crime. They did not believe Gus had wandered away. They did not believe Gus had been abducted, and that someone in the family or on the homestead had been deceptive in their answers and had given, you know, said conflicting things. And when the police tried to double down on it, according to the police, this was the police that said this, according to the police, when they tried to double down on the statements that had been given, the person, they haven't named the person, but they've practically named them, withdrew cooperation. And so the police felt that they had a suspect, but we must bear in mind they still have not found Gus, either alive or dead. The police have said they think Gus is dead, but they have not found him. And these two GMAs, they're in the frame because the police stated specifically that Gus's parents were not suspects. So they've said that Gus's parents are not suspects. Well, that only leaves the two GMAs, Josie and Shannon. But we also must bear in mind that ever since the police declared this, so these two ladies have lawyered up with separate lawyers, apparently, and they released a statement saying they were devastated at what the police had said, that they had cooperated fully. You know, they had nothing to do with the disappearance of Gus. And, you know, this is where we are. We've got the police saying, not naming them specifically, but saying that somebody who lived at that sheep shearing station is a suspect. One person is a suspect who's withdrawn cooperation, who's given conflicting accounts of what happened to Gus. And they've also stated categorically it is not the parents. So it only leaves these two women. Only leaves Josie and Shannon, and maybe both of them in it together. I mean, I think 100% the police are correct. It always felt strange, this case. This boy just wandered off on that huge... Now, so there's been huge resources wasted on the search for Gus, if this is true, and these ladies know exactly where Gus is, and they've just let the police spend, you know, take all those resources. I mean, it's not wasted if it's a genuine search for a little 4-year-old boy. But if it turns out that it's a wild goose chase, you know, that's a lot of money, a lot of resources that could have been used to find other missing children or people. So there has to be an accounting for that. If they are eventually charged and found guilty, they should account for that, I think, you know, because that's just awful, putting the police resources through all that if it's not true. Now, of course, you know, they're innocent till they're proven guilty. The police have not arrested them or charged them. Having said that, that's what I'm here to make this video about. There has been an arrest and there have been charges, but they are firearm charges. Can you guess which one of these grandmas has been charged, called into the police station, arrested and charged with firearms offences. I wonder if you can guess which one it is. Now, interestingly enough, like, let me just say hello to the people, because there are people in the chat now, so let's have a look. Hi, Snoopy. Hi, Miss Lee. Yeah, all be blessed. Hi, David. Hi, Lily. This is big news, I think, because although, and of course it is Josie, as a lot of us we call Annie Oakley or Shotgun Lil, because of course it was Josie, the GMAR that transitioned, that was a GPAR at one time. Well, he was never, to be fair, a GPAR to Gus, because Gus wasn't born until after Josie transitioned. So as far as Gus is concerned, this has always been his GMAR, because as long as Gus has been alive, Josie has been a woman. So, of course, there was a big hoo-ha when the Daily Mail reporter went round to try and get a statement from this family, when Josie was the one who appeared at the doorstep, with a pump-action shotgun, no less, and threatened. The Daily Mail reporter was very aggressive. She later said, didn't she, that she'd gone out to shoot snakes on the porch. I've got this feeling, did Gus have an accident with the gun? Did he see a gun? It might not have been that pump action shotgun. Were they not kept away from little prying hands? You know what kids are like, especially boys, and especially if he wanted to play cowboys and Indians and he saw a gun, he'd think, oh, this is great. He could easily have shot himself by accident. Or is it like an act of rage? From Josie, we would hope that Josie loves Gus. And you would hope that whatever has happened to Gus, if he is deceased, as the police seem to think he is, you would hope that it wasn't, red rum, that it was an accident at least. But she needs to come clean. Anyway, it is her. So let's have a look. It is her who's been arrested. Let's have a look at the news. So I just caught it on X earlier, and I thought I've got to go on and tell the chatters about that, because, we want to see the end of this case. We want to see justice for Gus. We want to see him brought home, laid to rest in a decent way. This is what makes me so angry. If this is Gus's GMAR, and supposedly, I would hope that his GMAR loves him, both the GMARs. How could you not love that little one? But you know what? Sometimes people are nasty, aren't they? So regardless. So, right, let's hope that the sound comes out. Sound worked this morning on my earlier stream, so I'm hoping that I'm on a roll today, but it is very windy, so I don't know what the internet's like.
There's been a bombshell arrest in the search for missing 4-year-old boy Gus Lamont. Hannah Ford joins us now from Peterborough in South Australia's mid-north. Hannah, the little boy's grandparent has been charged with firearms offences.
That's right, Peter. Josie Murray drove herself here, where she remained for about an hour before she was given police bail. However, those firearms charges aren't believed to be linked to the little boy's likely death. The 75-year-old was arrested as police investigating Gus Lamont's disappearance returned to the remote homestead where he was last seen. But this search is very different to the 8 others conducted before. It's the first one since the case was declared a major crime 12 days ago, and police are now focused on finding evidence to support their criminal investigation. They already have a suspect, someone who's close to Gus, but it's not his parents. There will be more searching tomorrow, likely at another property in the area, before police return to Adelaide. Meanwhile, Josie Murray will face court here in Peterborough on those firearms charges on May 6th.
Okay, So interesting. So it's Josie who's been arrested for firearms charges. Now, I read in another article that it was not connected to what happened when the Mail reporter went round. It wasn't connected to that. So, what is it connected to? You know, did the police, when they went round there, have they just found firearms lying around? Or have they found that there are unregistered? So I would imagine in Australia, the same as for everywhere, you do have to register your weapons, don't you? And you have to have a license to keep them. So what is the so apparently Josie drove herself to the station. She was that they didn't turn up at the house and arrest her, take her off in handcuffs. I think they contacted her and asked her to come down to the station, and she went voluntarily. That's what I can gather. She's been released on bail. That lady said it was May, wasn't it? Her next hearing. Now, to me, why this is intriguing, I'm going to play that again in a moment, but to me, why it's especially intriguing is the police have got their sights set on one of these GMAs, haven't they? I mean, she's 75, Josie, but she looks very strong and, very muscular. And whereas the other one, Shannon, she does look frail. Why was she looking after a 4-year-old and a baby? She doesn't, I'm not being horrible. I'm just being truthful. I'd be struggling to look after a 4-year-old and a baby. Do you know, it's a lot, isn't it? That's why people have children when they're young, because they're, especially toddlers. Oh my God, you can't take your eye off them for a minute. And I remember thinking at the time when it said that Gus was playing outside, and 30 minutes later, when she went out to look for him, I remember thinking, 30 minutes? You leave a 4-year-old for 30 minutes unsupervised. I don't think you can leave a 4-year-old unsupervised, in my living room. You've got to watch them every minute, even when they're sat right in front of you, because they're so quick and they are inquisitive, they're curious, they get into things, they drink bleach, don't they? They get into, that's why things have got childproof caps on them. There's a reason for that. It's not like just for the sake of it. Children are always getting into scrapes, little children like that. I remember years ago there was a big hoo-ha, wasn't there, about children who would go in disused fridges and then they couldn't get back out again. A 4-year-old, not 30 minutes. James Bulger, the little 2-year-old that disappeared in Liverpool, those two horrible boys took him away. His mum took her eye off him for about 30 seconds and he was gone. That's how quick things can happen. And children of that age, you cannot leave them to play on a mound of sand for 30 minutes. I remember feeling incredulous at that. You just can't. Doesn't matter whether you should be able to or you can't. So now, whether that's true or not, I mean, it may be that she did leave him for 30 minutes, and when she went out, he died for some reason. He'd had an accident, or it may be that he didn't disappear on that day. That was the story that they cooked up. We don't know. Apparently, he was seen not long before he disappeared by somebody. We talked about that, I think, in the last video. A friend of the family had said they had seen Gus not that long before he disappeared. So he hadn't been gone for ages and ages like we were wondering, because that's the first thing you want to know is when was the last time anybody but the family saw him? And where was his mum? It's never been made clear, really, I think, who was there on that day. It's Shannon who's made the statement that she was looking after him and his little brother. And 1 minute he was there when she went to call him in her. Half an hour, 30. If I sat here now and just didn't say anything for 30 minutes, some of you'd be happy about that now. But you see what a long time that is to take your eyes off a 4-year-old. God, there's all sorts of things that could happen. So at the very least, it's negligence, isn't it, really? To just leave a 4-year-old to their own devices on a place like that, which looked like it was full of dangers. Hi, Moonbeam. So let's just watch this one more time.
There's been a bombshell arrest in the search for missing 4-year-old boy Gus Lamont. Hannah Ford joins us now from Peterborough in South Australia's mid-north. Hannah, the little boy's grandparent has been charged with firearms offences.
That's right, Peter. Josie Murray drove herself here, where she remained for about an hour before she was given police bail. However, those firearms charges aren't believed to be linked to the little boy's likely death. The 75-year-old was arrested as police investigating Gus Lamont's disappearance returned to the remote homestead where he was last seen. But
now, I wonder if they got Josie into the station and that's when they took advantage of her not being at the house to go to the house, because they're searching the house now. And as this lady says, this reporter will say, this is the first time since they're searching, since they declared it a major crime. So where is Gus? So basically, they're looking for a body now. They've said that they're not looking for they don't think Gus is alive. They think he's dead, and they've declared it a major crime. Now they've stopped short of saying it's a red rum. It could be an accident, of course, but it's a major crime to cover up something like that, isn't it? Even if it was an accident in the first instance. It's a major crime to cover up someone's death, a child's death, and to get all the police out on wild goose chases looking for a boy who's already dead. That is a major crime, terrible. So, as I say, we can only presume it was an accident. It's hard to imagine it could have been deliberate. But I wonder, because they've arrested her on firearms charges, do you think firearms are connected to this incident, whatever it is, whether it was an accidental shooting by Josie, or did Gus himself get his hands on one of the weapons, where the weapon's not stored properly? And he wasn't being supervised properly, was he, at the end of the day? I just think any 4-year-old boy who saw a gun lying around, they're bound to pick it up and start playing with it. And this has happened quite a few times, hasn't it? I've seen other cases of this happening. Of course they do. Boys like to play with guns. Believe me, when I had my son, and I said, I'm not going to buy him any guns or anything like that. I bought him a kitchen and a mop and bucket. It's just waste of time. Do you know what I mean? He didn't want them. He wanted guns. There is a genetic thing in it. Or it's certainly, what people want. They either, I'm not saying that boys only want guns. There be boys that do want dolls and things like that. But what I'm saying is, I think that comes out quite early, doesn't it, in children's lives. It's not you pushing them towards a gun. I would not let my son have a gun. But, as they get older, and then all their friends have got guns. So, a toy gun, not a real one, obviously. That they like it, like, he liked sort of wrestling figures and things like that. He liked the kitchen that I bought him when he was very young, because he liked doing the cooking on it, like making burgers and stuff like that. And he liked cooking. I should have got him. Saw a gun lying around and he wasn't being supervised properly. There's no doubt in my mind he would have played with it. He would have. No matter how much he'd probably been told to stay away from the guns. You can't rely on a child to do something because you've told them to. You've got to make sure that anything like that, children, they always head for the most dangerous thing. If there's a lighter hanging around, they'll pick the lighter up. It's almost as if they know how to give you a heart attack. You turn around, suddenly they've got a lighter in the hand, or You're like, oh my God, so that's why you can't leave them alone for half an hour. Like this boy apparently was left alone for half an hour. Anything could have happened.
Search is very different to the 8 others conducted before. It's the first one since the case was declared a major crime 12 days ago, and police are now focused on finding evidence to support their criminal investigation. They already have a suspect, someone not. There will be more like property in the area before the borough on those firearms charges on May 6.
So May the 6th is, the next, May the 6th, she'll be in court. Now, by then, she might have been arrested for something else. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Snoopy, what you're saying. You know what? The thing is, we don't get that much in the UK or even here in Spain. It's not common for people to have guns in Spain, except for hunting, I suppose. You can get a gun, you can get a gun license, and there's a lot of, hunting for rabbits, and there's wild boars, javelinas, they're called. There's probably quite a lot of hunting for different animals here in Spain, but a lot of animals are protected, having said that, but rabbits aren't, bless them. But, I know in America it's quite a common occurrence, isn't it? People having accidents with guns, because if you have a lot of guns around, you're likely to have an accident if they're not stored properly. Sometimes you think it could be 99 times out of 100 you store your gun properly, and then the one time you do not store it properly, something happens. And you know what? Accidental gunshot, as you said they were out hunting and the gun was on the seat. Yeah, it might not even be because anybody's wielding it. It's not necessarily because someone's got hold of the gun and they take a shot. It can be, they can go off by accident if they're jolted, or, there's a lot of things that could happen if the gun's not stored properly or kept, properly with the safety guard on. I mean, was the safety guard on it? I'm talking about as if I've decided now that Gus died of a gunshot injury or something. But it just seems possible, that's all. And maybe the gun was left around, it didn't have the safety catch on it. Maybe Josie was out trying to shoot a snake on the porch, as she said she was when the Daily Mail reporter went round. Is that something she did on a regular basis, shot snakes? And maybe if Gus had seen her do that, thought, I'm going to help, I'm going to shoot a snake. Kids, children copy as well, don't they? They copy their elders. And he may have looked upon his Gma Josie as someone, to copy. Right, I want to show this article because there's a picture of Josie here, I think. Yeah, look, this is Josie turning up for court. Grim-faced, of course she would be pretty grim-faced. Josie, you need to do the right thing and tell the truth. I think Josie's hiding a lot. As I say, I'd like to think it wasn't a deliberate killing of Gus. It was an accident somehow. But whatever the truth, this person or Shannon, the other person, the other GMAR, they need to tell the truth, because look at what they're putting their daughter through. If this is true, their daughter Jessica, mind you, that I don't think they really care about Jessica. They've only really ever cared about themselves. This is the GMAR that transitioned and then didn't like Gus's dad because he was supposedly just a farmhand, not good enough for her daughter. But, if you don't want people to judge you, then, well, maybe she shouldn't be judging other people like that. She certainly looks like a force to be reckoned with, doesn't she? I find it quite scary to look at, to be honest. Terrifying is probably the word. 75 years old. So a 75-year-old has been arrested and charged with firearm offences following a search of the property in South Australia's northeast, where 4-year-old Gus Lamont went missing last year. South Australian police have returned to the Oak Park station near Yunta, searching for evidence in the boy's disappearance. So this boy was reported missing on September the 27th last year. Been ages, hasn't it? Ages, months and months, all through Christmas. Anyway, they said the firearms offences are not related to Gus's disappearance, nor an incident at the station involving media in October, and they have been bailed to appear in the Peterborough Magistrates Court on the 6th of May. And just a reminder that on February the 5th, police said that a person who lived at the property was now considered a suspect, but not the boy's parents. So basically, the police told us it was one of the GMAs, but we don't know which one is considered a suspect. But if we had to put money on it, it'd be this one, wouldn't it? You know, it would definitely be this one. If I had to put money on it, I would think it's got to be the GMA they're talking about. It's got to be this one. She's the aggressive one. She's the aggressive one. Hi, David. You're back in chat. So, yeah. Here's the aggressive GMA. Is she the main suspect? I mean, I could be wrong. It could be Shanann who's the main suspect. But the police have said one person has been identified as a suspect. But are they complicit, both the grandmas together? Which grandma is it that's been given the information that's not adding up? You know, this is what the police say is the reason, is that one of the people, and it's got to be one of these grandmas, stopped cooperating because they pressed them on details that weren't adding up. You know, details, conflicting accounts. So as I say, if you had to put money on it, you would say it was probably Josie Murray, but we don't know. So earlier today, police revealed members of Task Force Horizon, which was established last year to investigate Gus's disappearance, had returned to Oak Park Station, and they said they'd gone back to the property to look for evidence, but confirmed that the search had concluded for the day. Are they going to go back tomorrow? Anyway, they told the media on February the 5th that a vehicle, a motorcycle, and an electronic devices had been seized during a search at Oak Park Station on January the 14th and 15th. I mean, the key here is to find Gus, isn't it? You know, unless they find other evidence, you know, data, etc., they need to find Gus, don't they? So now it's declared a major crime. They had explored 3 investigation options. 1, that he walked away from Oak Park Station. 2, that he was abducted, or that someone known to him was involved. And they said they've got no evidence to suggest he'd wandered off or was abducted. So that only leaves them with one option, which is someone he knows is involved. And the person, of course, it's not the parents. So it only leaves the grandparents. So, as I say, they've come out, they've lawyered up, and they've come out and said, you know, the actual grandparents have lawyered up and come out and said, no. You know, we've cooperated fully. Have they, though? You know, I think it's unusual. You know, one thing I've learned from covering cases in Australia over the last couple of years, Australian police, they don't say anything unless they're pretty sure of it. You know, they're frustrating sometimes. They're not as transparent as in America. You know, they're very tight-lipped about what they give away before a trial. Saw that with Erin Peterson. We've seen it with Samantha Murphy. So for the police to come out and say that, I just think, you know, there's a reason for that, isn't it? They're not just saying that for the sake of it. So, yeah. So, as always, let me know what you think. Do you think this adorable little boy, something happened to him because his grandparents did it to him? Or did he have an accident, maybe with a gun, and that's why they've covered it up? But, you know, people do, I mean, obviously it's awful, but people do have accidents. Things happen. Why would they have covered it up? Why not just be open that it had an accident? And that's what makes you think maybe it was to do with a firearm, because maybe it was a firearm that shouldn't have been hanging around, had no license for it. You know, when cover-ups happen, it's because something nefarious has happened normally. Or maybe it was an explosion of temper and, I don't know, maybe hitting him and he fell over. Oh, you know, there's a million things that might have happened to this poor little boy at the hands of one of his GMARs. Yeah, exactly, David. Should have been declared from the beginning if it was an accident. It makes you more suspicious now because you think, well, why wouldn't you? As horrible as it is, you know, if you were looking after a child and something happened to it on your watch, you'd be absolutely devastated, wouldn't you? But you would phone the authorities straight away. You'd have to, wouldn't you? They don't. They, you know, what? How could you not? What's happened to this little boy? What's happened to this little boy that's so terrible? They did not feel that they could tell the police about it. What are they covering up? You know, and they're elderly women. You know, they haven't got, you know, not being funny, but it's the truth. They haven't exactly got the, you know, a long life in front of them. Well, they might have 20 years, I don't know. Maybe their families live till into their 90s or whatever. As well, how could you sleep at night? How could you face your daughter? You know, because it seems like the daughter, can you imagine how Gus's poor mum is feeling now? So not only, you know, she's lost her boy, and the police will have practically told her that he's dead and he's not ever coming back. But not only that, but it seems like it's her own parents that have covered it up. How could they do it to her? You know, how could they? Horrible people. Some people are just horrible. Now, I have to keep remembering, innocent till proven guilty, innocent till proven guilty. But I think the police are really stepping up this. And also, I wondered if they arrested her, because they'll have been able to take her DNA, will they? I would imagine. If you arrest somebody on serious charges, like firearms charges are serious charges. You know, it's not shoplifting, is it? It's not, you know, going through a red light or something. Firearms charges suggest seriousness, and whether that means then because you can only ask for someone's DNA if you've got probable cause, haven't you? So there are certain offences where automatically your DNA can be taken, but just generally the police can't say to you, look, we want your, well, they can say we want your DNA, and then, but you can refuse to give it unless you're arrested for a serious charge, and then you can't refuse, can you? It's obligatory for you to give your DNA, and your lawyer would tell you that. So could be all part of that. I don't know, just trying to get her DNA. Maybe they found some items. So we must remember that nothing has been found from Gus, not any of his clothes, you know, his hat apparently that he was wearing, you know, so he's just literally disappeared into thin air, into a puff of smoke. And there were lots of theories, weren't there? Did a wild animal will take him? Did this happen? Did that happen? But the police now are saying, no, this is a major crime. Somebody's covered something up, and they believe they have a suspect, which is probably, I think, as I said, well, it's one of these two ladies, and I know who I think it is, because they just seem like the more, what's the word, powerful one. But of course, that doesn't mean anything. Shanann, she doesn't look very powerful there. She looks quite frail and elderly, but maybe she isn't. You know, maybe I'm just presuming it's Josie because she's the most sort of healthy looking one or scary looking one, really. I think you could say that's why I'm say, you know, Mrs. Pepperpot, she doesn't look like she could harm a fly, does she? But that doesn't mean that she couldn't, of course. You know, you can't go by appearances, can you? And it could be there is Shanann that's the suspect. The police have not said. So basically, the police have told us it's not the parents, which only leaves these two women. So it's dip, 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 my blue ship. Who is the suspect? You know, the police haven't said, they haven't qualified which one, but they've made it clear. Not by saying it's one of the grandmas, but saying that it's not the parents. It only leaves the grandmas. So, you know, it's, as I say, dip, 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 my blue ship, sailing on the water like a... In fact, I'm going to do that. Dip, 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 my blue ship, sailing on the water like a cup and saucer. I say it will be this one. And yes, I would have said Josie. But anyway, I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just, this is how I feel. I feel that it must be Josie, that she was very aggressive when that male reporter went round. But I must reiterate that these new charges, firearms charges, they're apparently not related to that incident. So we don't know which incident they're related to, or maybe it's just the fact she's got weapons there at the house that she shouldn't have. So I thought I'd just let you know, the police are definitely putting the spotlight. I think they'll just put pressure now. Legitimate pressure. I mean, you know, they've got to be careful what they do because they've got an inquiry going on. They don't want to jeopardize any future court cases. So they'll just go slowly, and hope that one or both of these GMAs break the sort of pact that they seem to have between them about what happened to this little boy. It's very sad, very sad. And my heart is with his mum as well. You know, I just can't imagine how she feels. Not only she's lost her little boy, but her own parents are implicated. And I hope her other little boy is bringing her some comfort. Okay, thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about Gus. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. They're free ways you can help my channel. And also don't forget to press notifications, because as soon as there's any news, just like this time, I'll be back to let you know about it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me take that off so I can blow you all a kiss. Thank you so much for watching, and especially for caring about Gus and any of the other victims that we talk about. They are the important thing, aren't they? You know, that's, you know, we want justice for Gus. Now, if it was like find Gus, now we don't feel that we're going to find him not alive anyway because of what the police have said. But justice for Gus, you know, they should away with this. Anyway, thank you for watching. Till I see you again. May your God go with you. Thank you.